Hi, in this video, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the R sound in English and how to produce it correctly. So, first of all, what is the R sound? It sounds like this, r, r, and that's called an alveolar approximant. I'm going to talk a little bit about this later, but just because it's represented with the same letter in writing doesn't mean it's the same sound. For example, it's very different to the French R, which is a velar fricative, r, r, or the Spanish R, which is an alveolar trill, r, r. So, how do we make this English R, this alveolar approximant? Well, first of all, behind your teeth, you should be able to feel a little bump. It goes from your teeth, and then there's like a little bump just behind. That's the alveolar ridge, okay? And that's where we are going to pronounce the sound. Second of all, uh, it's not just an alveolar tap or a fricative or whatever, it's an approximant. That means that you're going to get your tongue close to the alveolar ridge, but not necessarily fully touching it, okay? Your tongue may be touching like other parts at the top of your mouth, but you don't have to be like sticking it to the alveolar ridge. Okay, so feel the front of your tongue, push it up, place it close to the alveolar ridge, and then make a sound like r, r. You can also tell that my lips are ever so slightly rounded, right? I'm not going r, r. That would be alveolar lateral approximant, maybe. They're slightly together. R, r, r. Okay, there you go. There's your r sound. I'm going to put a link in the description to a YouTube video that is an MRI of somebody producing the r sound. So you can really see how the tongue moves. That'll help you visualize it. Okay, now we can divide English accents into two big groups. Number one is rhotic, and number two is non-rhotic. What does that mean? Rhotic accents, i.e., most North American and Irish accents, are accents where whenever you see an R in a word when it's written down, you pronounce it. So it doesn't matter if it's at the beginning of the syllable, in the middle of the word, at the end of the word, at the end of a syllable, you pronounce it. In non-rhotic accents, which are the majority of British accents, Caribbean accents, Indian accents, Southern Hemisphere accents, you do pronounce the R at the beginning of a syllable or between two vowels, even if those two vowels belong to two different words, but you never pronounce it at the end of a syllable, especially not when there's a consonant after it. That might sound a little complicated, but let me give you an example. Um, first example is the letter R. Notice that when I say R, I'm not making the sound. Somebody who speaks with a rhotic accent might say something more like R, R, right? But I say R because it's at the end of the syllable, and so I'm not pronouncing it. But let's have a look at the word rather. Yeah, I would rather do this or I would rather do that. It's for expressing a preference. I am going to pronounce the r at the beginning, ra, ra, but the er at the end, I'm not going to pronounce that r. Rather, rather. Okay. It's the same for the word for. Yeah, for, for. I'm not saying for. I'm saying for. Um, but in the expression for example, for example, for example, I am going to produce that R sound because it's in between two vowels. Now, you might be thinking, oh, okay, those are a lot of rules for the pronunciation of one sound. I'm going to try and pick a rhotic accent. So I just know whenever there's an R, I pronounce it, case closed. And that's fantastic. That's great. What I would say is if you have a lot of trouble physically producing the R at the end of a syllable or between, um, well, no, between two vowels, you're going to have to pronounce it anyway. But at the end of a syllable, for example, in the word, so we have the verb to offer, yeah, and then we have the past tense offered. You can hear that I don't produce the R, right? In a rhotic accent, you'd say offered, offered. If you have real trouble with that, like it's uncomfortable for you to produce it, you might want to consider going with a non-rhotic accent, and that might make it easier for you to pronounce English in general. So that's it. That's all I have to say about the R sound. There are plenty of tongue twisters that you can do to help you with that. You can find them all over YouTube and the internet. Yeah, practice the sound at home and decide whether you want to produce it everywhere or whether you just want to produce it at the beginning of a syllable and between two vowels.